Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Storytelling Chronicles. I'm your host, the Bodacious Cowboy. Let's get this story started. Sing
Look out! Pop, pop, it's showtime. 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 Guess who's back again? Oh, they don't know. Gone time. Oh, they don't know. Gone time. I bet they know as soon as we walk in. Showed up. I'm wearing Cuban links. Yeah. Designer mix. Yeah. Inglewood's finest shoes. Whoop, whoop. Don't look too hard, might hurt yourself. Known to give the color red the blues. Woo, shit. I'm a dangerous man with some money in my pocket. Keep up. So many pretty girls around me and they're waking up the rocket. Keep up.
Welcome, everyone, to the Storytelling Chronicles. I am the Bodacious Cowboy. It is Tuesday, November 28th. We have a great show in store for you. My good friend and co-founder of Linkage Logistics is joining us. We're going to bring him in right now, Dan Lindsey. Hey, Dan.
Hey, good afternoon, Jeff. How are you?
I am doing fine. How about you?
I'm doing well. I'm coming to you from a closet in Fishers, Indiana.
Because I was about to say you're coming from a concealed area that if you told me, you'd have to kill me.
Yes, it's one of those situations. I'm clandestine right now.
There you go. There you go. So those out there who do not know who Dan Lindsey is, tell everybody about yourself.
Yeah, so thank you very much for having me on. Dan Lindsey, co-founder of Linkage Logistics. We are a full-service, full truckload freight brokerage. Launched in March of 2020. I've been in logistics for going on 16 years in different aspects, mostly full truckload. Decided to branch out and give back to the industry in a way that I found valuable at the beginning of this year and launched the Broker Carrier Summit, which is a unique event that is attempting to bridge the gap between freight brokers and trucking companies in a way that I don't think anybody else is doing. So.
Yeah, and I attended that first one down in Tampa, and actually it was the second one, I should say, because the one before that was in Indianapolis, and it was attended by 75 attendees, but we tripled it in Tampa, and I think we had over 225. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah, 227 actually total.
That's a good number compared to the first one, that's for sure, tripling those numbers. So you must have created something that's definitely taken some footage and started moving forward with some momentum, which is great. So this topic, as you well know, is about carrier broker tensions. Voila. Mm-hmm. And the problems that they're having and why they're having it. And one of the biggest reasons why you put this broker carrier summit together to iron out the issues, to bring everybody together and have them communicate and collaborate and understand each other. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the most common reasons why brokers and carriers disagree, and there's this trust gap between them, is because the communication between brokers and carriers is not done in a way that facilitates that trust. And what do I mean by that? So if you're a freight broker or a trucking company who works with freight brokers, probably 90% of the conversations you have with that broker or with that carrier are transactional conversations. One of the interesting things at our first summit in Indianapolis, the first comment we had, we went around the room, and I told the story before, but we asked everybody why they were here, and the first comment was, "I hate brokers, but I've never actually met one." And I think that's more common than most people think in the industry. Brokers get a bad rap, and for good reason. There are bad actors out there. There are dodgy business practices, just like there are bad carriers out there that brokers want to avoid. But the fact that neither side has spent quality time with the other side is a real problem when it comes to building partnership-driven relationships, which is what the freight business has always been about.
Indeed. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think what really happens, and yeah, you can't leave the shipper out, Dan, right? I mean, because they're the ones that really start the momentum on who's going to do what, whether you're going to an asset carrier directly, or you're going to go to a middleman and reach out to a broker who's going to reach out to a carrier. And it's like the old grapevine. right? What's said from the beginning doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the same as you give it to the carrier, because everybody's trying to pull the wool over someone else's eyes and make the biggest profit. The shipper wants to save as much money as they possibly can. The broker wants to make as much margin as they possibly can. And the carrier, they want to move their assets, their equipment to keep them rolling. So they get squeezed a lot because of the other two, right? I think
absolutely.
I just think it's a big problem, and why the margins are so large. I mean, let's face it. I'm honest, and my integrity is first and foremost. You know it.
Yep.
Let's talk about fuel. You know, a lot of fuel, the FSC is not an actual pass through. A lot of brokers out there, they'll put some points on that to grow the margin up and to put more money in your pocket. Myself, any accessorial that's out there, I do as a true pass-through.
Right.
It's what it is. There's no reason for me. There's no justification. I can't justify it to my customer or client and tell them the reasons why I upticked it two percentage points on fuel. That has nothing to do with me. You know, managing carriers and the transportation management is one thing. Upticking everything that's a la carte, if you will, is another. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think absolutely. And fuel is one way that brokers do it. Another one is detention and layover. I know personally brokers that will fight tooth and nail with their shippers to get detention or layover for their carriers, and then not pay the carriers detention or layover. And that does nothing but increase the level of distrust between brokers and carriers, because the carriers aren't dumb. They know that you're getting paid for that accessorial. They know that you spent 3 hours on the phone fighting for it. You got something out of it. And the carrier, the driver, is the one on the dock for the extra time. He should be getting all of that money. So that goes back to the larger point. If you're a shipper and you rely on brokers and carriers to do the bulk of your transportation, and those two sides are always at odds, what does that lead to? Service failures.
Absolutely.
If you're working with transportation companies that don't know how to partner well with each other, you are going to have an increased number of service failures.
Absolutely.
And so an event like the summit benefits shippers down the line, in addition to benefiting the brokers and the carriers.
Right. And one thing that's true, there is no benefit to the shipper for lying and not telling them about the full operation, whether it's at their site or at the consignees, because it's their customer, right? They don't tell everybody what really actually goes on. How long does it take to load a truck? I should be there about an hour and a half. Okay, that's acceptable. However, the reality is that on a live load, they'll be there 2 or 3 hours. They don't tell you about that. And it's another 3 or 4 hours at the consignee where you're going to be sitting there still. And then also, hey, if you don't get there by a specific time on a specific date, must arrive by date, right, Mad? You're going to have to wait overnight. They don't say anything about that, especially if you're a new truck driver. You haven't been at that consignee, let's just say Walmart or CS Wholesales or Wakefern or something like that, where you know you're going to go there. You're going to have mass detention if you get in there at all. If you have an appointment at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, you're not going to get offloaded until 7 or 8 o'clock at night. But that affects those drivers.
And that's if you show up on time. God forbid you're late.
Exactly. And the thing is that if you don't know the operations, I think it starts in two areas, Dan. One, the broker doesn't ask the pertinent questions that open up those conversations, because, you know, the old adage, if you don't ask, you don't get. So there's no reason for the shipper to tell you something that you didn't ask for. So if you have to get a lumper or there's detention or anything like that at the consignee, they're not going to say or agree to it. And there's no reason to have a contract in place that says 2 hours of free time. Anything over that, it's X amount of money. If there's a driver assist, it's extra amount of money. They never discuss that. But when it happens, and you go back to the shipper to get that money, they won't pay it.
Right, because you should have known all that information up front. And that goes back to one of the things that we talked about at the first summit and built on in the most recent one in Tampa is if you're on the phone with a broker as a carrier, you need to know what questions you need to ask. You need to know what information you need. And then you need to actually get that information. And if you're a broker on the phone with a carrier and you don't have all the information, or even worse, if you're withholding information from the carrier because you're afraid they're going to fall out on the load if they don't have all the facts, then you need to rethink your business strategy as well. Because that nobody benefits, like you said. You end up having to go back to the shipper. The shipper asks, "Why the hell do we have to pay extra money when you knew all this up front?" Then everyone looks like they don't know what they're doing, which doesn't build trust in the industry. And it doesn't improve the broker's relationship with their customers in the long term.
True. And there's one thing. I don't know if you read the post this morning on LinkedIn, but someone was talking about rates and squeezing the carrier, right? So when we did RFPs, I'm not sure when you do RFPs, I don't give the carrier a rate that he needs to meet. I ask him simply, "Hey, what can you do this lane for you? Is this lane good for you?" Right? And they give you a number, and I was like, "Okay, I appreciate it. I got a lot of other carriers that are also bidding on this lane. Is this your best rate that you can give me?" Right? And so we moved down, and we're going through that, and days pass, and now you're selecting your carriers, and now you're going back out to the carriers that bid that didn't get awarded that, and you talk to them. Because it's all about communication, right? And you tell them, "Hey, sorry, buddy, but listen, unfortunately, you're about $300 more than the competitors out there." And they come back and they go, "Oh, why don't you tell me? I could have done a hell of a lot better, if I knew that ahead of time." And it's like, well, what didn't you understand when I said put your best foot forward? What does that mean to you? You're the one that creates your destiny yourself, not me. I don't fire carriers. I say this all the time, and I said it for decades. I don't fire carriers. Carriers fire themselves because I tell them what is expected, what are the requirements, and whether or not they want to meet or exceed them, that's up to them, not me. Right?
100%.
The onus is on them to do what's been told of them to do. And that's another thing that drives tensions up with the shippers. And I'm coming to you as a shipper because it's like, if this is the way the guy's going to act or the rep, why would I even bring them even more opportunities when I know the modus operandi that they're going to do the exact same thing? They're going to lie through their teeth, And it's like, listen, you're not just losing a $4,000 load. You're losing a multi-million-dollar opportunity. Is that what you really want to do here?
Right. Well, it happens in the brokerage world too. I work with a number of companies over the years, and I've had more than a handful of companies tell me that I'm not the lowest rate, but they don't even look at the guy with the lowest rate because he always comes back and asks for more money. So it goes the other way too. So if you bid 30% below market rate just to quote unquote get the lane, and then you always come back asking for more, you don't look any better than the guy who lost the lane to begin with.
Right. I mean, that's exactly the way I used to do it when I was at Panasonic. You had the low, the medium, and the high. I surely wouldn't use the high, and I'm definitely not going to the basement. I'll use that medium one, that average one. And then what I'm doing, because as you know, I'm not a transactional broker. I'm a dedicated broker, and that's all I deal with is dedicated lanes because it minimizes the risk. It gives you more control. It builds loyalty. It builds long-term business relationships, and that's what I'm all about. That's what RGTX is all about. So the thing is with that is that when I go out to these carriers and I bring them on board, they know that they can come down a little bit because they're not there for the short term. They're there for the long haul. It's consistent weekly business. And as the market unfolds, which there's no expectation of that doing that for the next 2, maybe 3 quarters going into 2024, they want to go on the ride because they know that business. They know it's consistent. Their people get to know the dock supervisors, the managers, whomever. They look forward to seeing each other because it's their route. That's how you build long-term business relationships. But on the transactional side, that's when the risks are much higher. The fraud exists much more. And that's when you run into a lot of problems because everybody is trying to pull the wool over someone else's eyes to get the advantage, if you will, which is
right. One,
it's piss
well,
poor.
Absolutely. Well, everybody in that transaction who lives 100% in that transactional spot market environment has, I'll call it Ricky Bobby syndrome. I want to go fast, right? I want to go fast. We had a saying in the military when we were on the range: slow is smooth, smooth is fast. You have to, if you're constantly looking at, covering the next load, you're going to get sloppy. You're going to cut corners. You're going to skip your processes, and your quality as a provider and as a vendor and as a customer, even for the carriers, is going to suffer tremendously. You're going to miss something. So everybody would benefit from taking a step back, surveying what you're doing, how you're doing it, and why you're doing it, and just moving a little more methodically, not slow necessarily, but processes are in place for a reason. And vetting procedures, if you have it. Well, and that's one of the I think the fortunate consequences of the market we're in. A lot of the brokers that are exiting the market right now are kind of these smaller, newer, inexperienced brokers that don't have the experience to put processes together to mitigate the risks that their customers are trying to mitigate by using them. And so that's actually, I think it's going to be a net gain for the industry as we continue to see kind of what shakes out. The cream always rises to the top.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's unfortunate that a lot of carriers that came in during the pandemic and made a killing over that, $5-6 a mile. I mean, they were raking it in. To your point, they didn't know how to budget themselves. And then came the freight recession, the soft market. And now you're starting to see a mass exodus of the mom and pops that are leaving the industry. We still have an uptick, I believe, of 26,000 overall. If you look from the beginning of this year to now, the ones that came in that redid their authority, the ones that already had their authority, and then the ones that came in and got new authority. I think, if I remember correctly from my friend at DAT, I think it was like a 26,000 K difference of the ones that are still on board. But still, I mean, you're talking about thousands and thousands of carriers that are leaving the market every single month. It's a cleansing. We need that in order for the market to change. But there's a lot of other things that have to take place. Carriers and brokers have to get together and understand. And on the big accounts, what I like to do is, before rates are discussed and all of this, I'll bring in carriers. I'll talk to my customers and have a carrier rep right next to me, and we'll go over the operations. So it's transparent. They know exactly what to expect. I get paid to manage the transportation operation on their behalf, and I want to do a good job. So we kind of lay everything out on the table. And when you have a very good relationship with the shipper, you can tell them to go pound salt because they believe in you. You have that credibility. You want that same kind of feeling towards your carriers as well, that if the carrier has a problem, they can go directly to your shipper. They're not going to back solicit it. They're going to have that respectful relationship as you would like a trifecta, where it's a triangle where everybody's communicating, everybody's on the same page. But that's not necessarily the truth in the way when you look at the overall industry and how it works. And that's why the Carrier Broker Summit is there to help people do that.
Absolutely, 100%. Because those relationships take time. They take time to develop. And if you're a carrier in this market, and if you're a broker in this market, you need to be thinking long term. You need to be thinking about consistency. As a carrier, if you can have a broker or two or three or five brokers to partner with through the muck that is this market right now, to just get you through until the next wave, to the market turns around, then that's winning. You don't have to have somebody pay you $3, $4, $5 a mile right now. All you have to do is make sure you're aligning with brokers that can cover your costs plus a little bit, so you can actually maintain your business and continue on as the market weeds out the carriers that aren't able to manage as efficiently. So
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly right, Dan, and that's what I've been preaching out there. I mean, a lot of people go out there and pray and spray, and they're trying to look at today, not for next year. I mean, this is a great opportunity to be in right now at the end of the year and start building those relationships so that when you jump into 2024, you're ahead of the game. You've got those relationships that are built. You have that infrastructure of the carriers in your corral that you can depend on. So when it switches and the market goes, you can turn the faucet on and you're like, I'm right there. I can do the drop and hooks. I got this guy here. I got that carrier there. You know, it's about setting it up right now. It's not about filling the pipeline. I know a lot of people disagree with me. It's like, no, we have to get that pipeline full, but with what? I mean, what are you filling it with? I mean, with that transaction, are you just trying to get customers in just to keep the trickle going? Or are you looking long-term and looking for the big hitters and trying to reduce your overhead, your SG&A, to manage that operation of keeping everybody in line? And that's what you said earlier about the processes. When things like that happen, processes kind of filter through and they get lost, and they're not retained. They're not a requirement anymore. You're thinking more profits than service, and that's when the problems come into play.
Well, 100%, and it's almost like stock trading and investing, right? So would you rather? Everyone would rather be Warren Buffett, but they act like a day trader. Warren Buffett is probably the most boring investor on the planet because he does the same thing over and over and over again. He's got a method. He's got a process. But you know what? Berkshire Hathaway is one of the largest investment companies in the world. And Phil, who's day trading in his parents' basement at 48 years old, is not. So you take risks when you act that way. That people who grow to scale don't even entertain. So.
And you know something that's great that you were talking about Warren Buffett, and I have a great story for you that you'll definitely appreciate. You know, we're talking about when the market switches and things change and what you should do now, today, to prepare yourself for next year. Well, I think about a decade ago, maybe even longer than that, Warren Buffett, there was a defunct railway that Kansas City Southern owned that was not used, that went down into Houston. And Warren Buffett bought it for $117 million above what it was worth. It was like, what are you, crazy? Why would you go and do something like that and take that risk? Well, to make a long story short, I believe that it went into Houston and it went into the country's largest Walmart DC operation, and it was the only rail line that went in there. Mm-hmm. Talk about smart and asking the right questions and finding out what the future was going to bring and investing into something that you were going to get an outrageous ROI on. It's the same thing about managing your operations as a broker or even as a shipper and preparing yourself for the future and what's going to happen. We know that it's going to happen. We just don't know when. It's a lengthy period of time right now because no one really expected it to go on as long as this. I mean, a lot of people said, it's going to switch. Well, it's going to end the first quarter. Now it goes to the second quarter in 2024. Now they're talking about the third quarter in 2024. That's what we're talking about. Looking at the what ifs and preparing yourself for the long term, not the short term.
100%. If you invest in relationships, the market doesn't matter. because
No.
if you spend the time and you spend the relational capital in investing in relationships with your customers, with your carriers, with your vendors and your partners, they will, and if you do so specifically in tough times, they will be there for you if you develop relationships well in the good times. And likewise, if you develop those relationships in the good times, they will help you weather the bad. Because believe it or not, very few people are in business for the sole purpose of screwing you over. That's not why people get in business. They get in business because they want to do something good for themselves, for their families, and for their employees, or for their community. Nobody gets in business, by and large, just so they can screw with people. So,
Right. No, and I agree with that. And here's the thing about shippers, and it's unfortunate. You know, if you're a logistics manager or a traffic manager, there's always someone above you that's pressing you to reduce costs, reduce costs, reduce costs. So what they try to do is, first and foremost, they're going to look at their transportation spend, and they're going to look at their forecast and their budget over a period of time. And they'll start pressing their incumbent carriers, which is the wrong thing to do. And let me explain that. So you have an incumbent carrier that's been with you quite some time. You're like, hey, ABC company, listen, I know we've been together for a long time, but you got to reduce your cost, putting this out to bid. And, the best carrier out there is the one that's going to win the lane, So now you're squeezing the incumbent carrier. You know how the carrier operates. You know how much they need to support you and service your needs the way that you need it done. And they let them go. They've been with them for about 2 years. Worst case scenario, Dan, is that all of a sudden the market changes. Those people that had the cheap rates don't have them anymore. They moved on. They're not supporting your needs. They're not loyal. What do you think is going to happen to your incumbent carriers that you've been supporting for 2 years, that you let go because you dived to the bottom? What do you think they're going to say when Bob, the shipper, reaches out to ABC company and says, hey, listen, the market changed. I want you back in my corral. Come on, let's start doing some business together. You know what I would say to that shipper?
I know exactly what you would say to that shipper. It's 2 words.
Right. Exactly. And it's not duck. I can tell you that right now. And the thing is that what the shipper thinks he's saving, he will pay, or she will pay, more in the long run than what they thought they were going to save by doing what they did. That's a fact. It's just a fact, because it's all about reinventing the wheel. It has a lot to do with freight payment services, the SG&A costs, building that relationship. The risks go up. The fraud exists more. There's so many different things that start coming in like a flood when you do something like that they don't think about when they're chasing the almighty dollar.
100%. Could not agree more.
Yep. So listen, let's talk about the Carrier Summit. I'm going to put it out there. Why don't you tell people about it, where they can register, and the agenda, topics we're working on, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So the Broker Carrier Summit, the next one is upcoming in Kansas City, Missouri, April 22nd to the 24th of 2024. Middle of the spring. It's going to be a great time in the Midwest, one of the barbecue hubs in the U.S. So I'm personally very excited about sinking into some Kansas City barbecue for a few days. We're gonna have a great show lined up. It's expanded from the one-day show or one-day event in Indianapolis to, we're doing essentially 2.5 days now. So it's on a Monday to a Wednesday. We're going to have some fantastic opportunities to network. Basically what we're trying to do is outdo what we did in Tampa. And anyone who went to the Tampa Summit will agree that's a pretty high bar. And so we're bringing in additional speakers. I'm really excited about some of the headliners we have coming in to speak. People that are going to speak not only to the industry, the freight industry, but who can speak to the individual business owners about how to view their business, why they're in business, how to analyze their costs, but how also to approach business in a way that bridges the gap that we're trying to bridge when it comes to trust. Also, we're going to have some great breakout sessions, a lot of panels in Kansas City. Things we're talking about factoring as a carrier. What should you consider when you consider choosing a factoring company? As a broker, should you consider factoring? We're going to talk about fuel. We're going to talk about TMS evaluation. We're going to talk about technology as a whole. When is it a good idea to integrate technology platforms? How should you be conceptualizing technology if you are a carrier in the industry with less than 2 years in the industry with fewer than 5 trucks? You should not be ignoring technology, but you should also not be blowing your wad on technology. So things like that. What we're trying to do is, and this is a goal that I have for each and every summit, is we want to, in everything we do, we want everyone to gain value in every piece of the event. We don't want to waste people's time. We don't want to waste people's money. We want everyone to benefit as much as possible from the event, from an education standpoint, as well as from an opportunity to network and interact with their potential next customer.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Now, those carriers and brokers out there, how can they register? Where do they got to go?
Yes, you can go to our website, www.brokercarriersummit.com. It will take you to our event page. I will say we're still building out the agenda. We have not put any of our speakers up there yet, or the session names specifically. We're going to start rolling those out methodically at the middle of December. So we just have the link up there. We're also going to have a golf tournament sponsored or led by our own Trey Griggs, who's very excited about that. So we're gonna have that up there as well. But they can go to brokercarriersummit.com and register today. And we have early bird pricing going on through the end of the year. And I believe you have a discount code as well.
That's right. And if you go and you register now, you'll get an additional 5% if you use code Cowboy1, and that's off the early bird discount rate. So get on over there. Check it out. Keep on following it. As Dan said, the agenda, the topics, things are changing rapidly. You'll see them being improved. So just keep on following it. I can tell you right now, because I did go to the Tampa one, and I was a speaker down there, and the people that I spoke with, I bet you 225 people, or 227 of them would say, they learned a lot. They gained a lot of partnerships, a lot of friendships, and now they have a really good understanding how to collaborate and be congruent with each other, being brokers and carriers, to help push and move the industry forward in a good way.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited.
Oh, I am too. So listen, Dan, the time has come to end the show. I appreciate you joining me once again. Love to have you back in the future. As everybody knows, I am dedicating my podcast for the next 4 months until the next Broker Carrier Summit in Kansas City happens on the 22nd through the 24th of April. I'm going to have some carriers on board. I'm going to have some brokers on board, and maybe even a few shippers to get their perception on what's going on and what we can do to resolve the issues at hand. So thank you, everybody, for coming. Thanks again, Dan, and the Bodacious is out. Have a great day, folks. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff.